Okay, Bike Guy Consulting here, and from the last video you probably realized or heard me say that there was no front hole for the Di2 cable for the front derailleur. So if we take a look at what's going on, I have completely stripped down the frame, took all the 105 and Praxis stuff off. These are the new handlebars I'm going to be putting on, these nice carbon aero Easton bars with all of the Di2 and hydraulic hose routing, which are cool. But if we go back down, what I realized is that once I got the cable and the cable housing out of that, I realized that the Di2 cable actually does fit through there, but not the connector. So what I did is I am going to splice it. So I cut one of my Di2 cables, and what it allows me to do is feed it in that way and internally bring it back out and then solder on the other end with a connector on it and protect it and seal it with some of the heat shrink tubing. And then it'll be a full cable and ready to go. So very excited that I don't have to drill out this frame because that's a little heartbreaking to have to drill out a brand new frame. Not really sure what impact that's going to have. The other problem I realized was that the Praxis cranks that were on here use kind of their proprietary bottom bracket, where this is a BB86 shell, so 86.5 millimeter wide bottom bracket shell, and it uses kind of a standard 24 millimeter opening here with these bearings, but on the opposite side, the non-drive side, the Praxis crank arm actually goes down to 22 millimeters. So, or the spacing for that opposite bearing goes down to 22 degrees. So you can't get a normal Shimano crank set through there and use the same bottom bracket. And if you listened, or pardon me, if you read my post on my Facebook page, when I first launched that page, you remember I talked about bottom bracket standards and how there really aren't any, right? Or there's too many, which makes it the same thing. If you have 50 different standards, there's really no standard. So what I had to do is I had to buy a whole bunch of new stuff. And that's the way it goes with bottom brackets. So previously on my Lightspeed titanium gravel bike, I had a PF30, PressFit 30 bottom bracket. And I used this tool here to take the bearings out and then the pieces here to actually install and use a bearing press to get it done. Now, when I researched the Praxis bottom bracket, it said I could use the same tool to remove that. Turns out that's a mistake on their installation guide, and what you actually need is not the BBT 30-3, but the BBT 90.3, and that's this here. So this is where we actually insert it through here and pull it out the other side, and then these flanges catch the inside once it goes inside, and you can pound it out from the other side and get those bearings out. So another tool, all because of these very, very crazy bottom bracket standards. And then what I'm going to be replacing it with is really just a very simple Dura-Ace press-fit bottom bracket. It's their standard part number they have is SMBB92-41B. So it can handle up to a 92 millimeter bottom bracket shell. Mine's 86, so you just don't use the spacers. And then the 41 there is the 41 millimeter inside diameter of your bottom bracket shell. So it's nothing special. Obviously, if you have experience with press fit bottom brackets, you know they have the tendency to creak. And many of them do, not all of them. So I may be replacing that if I do get some creaks going on. I did have that problem on my Lightspeed. I ended up going through a couple different bottom brackets and settled on the BB Infinite press fit fix, and that worked quite well. So the other thing I did buy is a little more accurate digital scale. Unfortunately, I stripped this down, so I'm going to stand by my kind of older scale, a weight of about 26 pounds for the Revolt Advanced 2 with everything on it. I think the biggest contributors to that heavy weight for a bike were this big what they called the giant conduct system, which translated a mechanical shifter to a hydraulic shifter. So basically your master cylinders were bolted to the front of your stem, and that was kind of a heavy device. I think the Praxis cranks were relatively heavy, and the wheel set I think is really heavy. I think there's a lot of rubber on those tires, and it's a kind of an entry-level gravel wheel set, so that's going to be heavy as well. Once I obviously swapping out carbon bars, I'm getting rid of the conduct system and going with direct hydraulic hoods. I'm going with a lighter Ultegra crankset, and then eventually I'll be putting the carbon wheels on it. But I also do have some other wheels up here, some American Classic that are pretty light that I'm going to be using for my road/gravel wheel set. So pretty excited about being able to move forward. I just got these tools in the bottom bracket in the mail today, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that first, get the bottom bracket out so that I can start to run some of the internal Di2 wiring. And actually I did already wire up a little bit of Di2 just down the down tube, and that's going to go to my my junction box and then connect all the other devices in the battery. But Giant does have these kind of nice little wire ports here that you can that attach and screw on. I did have to drill this out, this little piece here, to be able to fit the Di2 connector through it. But that's a plastic piece, not a big deal, not worried about that. And then that's the only thing that's going to be going in that connector. And then over on this side will be my hydraulic hose, and that's already sized for hydraulic cabling for my rear brake. And obviously the front brake's just going to go right down into the forks, out to the inside hole, and then right over to the caliper. So I'm pretty excited about getting this worked up, but I have to get that bottom bracket out of there first because I have a lot of wiring. You know, I have the one main cable coming down here. I'm going to have a junction box. I have to wire up the front derailleur, rear derailleur, and the battery that's going to be in the seat post. So stay tuned for additional updates on that. But right now I'm ready to go and start doing a lot of work. Thanks for visiting.